The Illusion of Concrete. June 6, 1944. 6:28 hours. Omaha Beach, Normandy. The sea is iron gray, pitching hard under a low sky. Landing craft slam into the chop, metal hulls screaming as they fight the tide. Diesel fumes mix with cordite and salt. Men crouch shoulder to shoulder, helmets low, rifles clenched, eyes fixed on a thin strip of sand that suddenly explodes with machine gun fire. You hear it before you see it. The sound is tearing canvas. German MG-42s rake the waterline, their rate of fire so fast it blurs into a single violent roar. Tracers slash through spray. A landing ramp drops. Water surges in. Men spill forward into chaos, some disappearing beneath the waves under the weight of gear, others clawing for footing as shells crash into the surf. There is no grand plan here. No speeches. Only survival. Above the beach, concrete bunkers squat like prehistoric animals, half buried in the bluffs. Steel teeth jut from the sand. Mines lie hidden beneath the shallows. This coastline has been transformed into a killing zone, engineered inch by inch to break any force that dares to land. This is the Atlantic Wall. And it is supposed to be impossible. Months earlier, Field Marshal Erwin Rommel stood on these same cliffs, boots planted in the chalk soil, staring out across the channel. Rommel, the Desert Fox, Germany's most celebrated battlefield commander, had seen too many wars decided in the first hours. He believed the enemy must be destroyed at the shoreline, or not at all. So he ordered concrete. More steel. More mines. Tobruk pits dug into the bluffs. Artillery casemates poured thick enough to absorb naval shells. Czech hedgehogs and wooden stakes driven into the sand, many capped with explosives, waiting for the tide to rise. Every beach mapped. Every approach measured. Every likely landing zone transformed into a trap. Rommel's logic was cold and precise. The Allies would never survive the crossing. And if they did, they would be crushed before they could bring armor ashore. From Berlin, Adolf Hitler agreed with the idea, then undermined it. Panzer divisions were held back, scattered, trapped in a chain of command paralyzed by indecision. Rommel wanted tanks forward. Others argued they should be kept inland. The result was neither. Still, Rommel believed the wall itself would be enough. Now, on this morning, it is being tested. At sea, Allied battleships opened fire. The USS Texas, USS Arkansas, British cruisers, destroyers, guns the size of boxcars thunder toward the coast. The shock waves roll across the water. Shells slam into the bluffs, tearing chunks from concrete, collapsing observation posts, filling the air with smoke and pulverized stone. But when the smoke clears, many of the bunkers are still there. Inside them, German defenders, grenadiers, artillery crews, teenage conscripts and hardened veterans alike, emerge shaken but alive. They drag MG barrels back into position. They reset sights. They wait for the silhouettes in the surf. Down on the beach, American soldiers from the 1st and 29th Infantry Divisions are pinned down behind shingle banks and steel obstacles. Radios are dead. Officers fall. Units dissolve into fragments. The plan, the carefully timed waves, the supporting armor, the clean advance inland, has already unraveled. Some men freeze. Others crawl. A few stand and run, and vanish in bursts of sand. Naval gunfire shifts closer, destroyers daring the mines and shallow water to bring their guns point blank against the cliffs. Shells punch holes into German positions only yards above the beach. It helps. But not enough. The wall is doing exactly what it was designed to do. And yet, amid the smoke and the screaming, something begins to change. Small groups form, 5 men, 10 men, hugging the ground, inching forward, using shell craters and wreckage as cover. Engineers crawl with Bangalore torpedoes, threading explosives through wire under fire. Medics move without weapons, dragging wounded back toward the waterline. There is no single breakthrough. No dramatic charge. Just stubborn motion. A German machine gun nest goes silent, not from a direct hit, but because its crew has run out of ammunition. Another is silenced by a grenade tossed through a firing slit. Somewhere on the bluff, an American lieutenant climbs a draw thought impassable and finds himself behind the defenses. The Atlantic Wall was built to stop armies. It was never designed to stop men who refused to stop moving. By mid-morning, the beach is still lethal, still chaotic, but it is no longer absolute. The wall is cracked, not shattered, but cracked enough for doubt to seep in. German officers peer through binoculars and realize the fire has not pushed the invaders back into the sea. They are still there. And more are coming. For the first time, the unthinkable enters German calculations. The wall may not hold. And somewhere far from Omaha, as reports crawl up the chain of command, a far more dangerous realization is about to form, one that will expose the fatal flaw not just in concrete and steel, but in Germany's entire belief about how this war will be fought. The cracks appear. 6:57 hours. Normandy hinterland behind Omaha Beach. The telephone rings inside a low concrete command post, its sound swallowed by the rumble of naval guns. A German signals officer lifts the receiver, listens, then stiffens. His report is short, precise, and wrong. Enemy contained on the beaches. It is what higher command expects to hear. It is what doctrine insists must be true. But already, the truth on the ground is drifting away from the paper maps and red arrows pinned to staff tables. Along the bluffs above Omaha, isolated German strongpoints fight on without coordination. Runners are dead. Field radios are shattered. Smoke hides the sea, hides the beach, hides the enemy's numbers. Each bunker commander sees only his own narrow slice of hell and assumes the rest of the wall is holding. It isn't. American destroyers push dangerously close, their hulls scraping unseen sandbars. From their bridges, captains sight targets with binoculars, bypassing spotters, firing by instinct and experience. 5-inch shells crash directly into embrasures. One bunker collapses inward, burying its gun crew alive. Another survives, but its firing arc is gone. On the beach below, soldiers who should be dead are moving inland. They move without orders. A sergeant gathers a handful of men whose officers are gone. He points uphill. A corporal finds a draw marked impassable on the invasion maps and starts climbing anyway. Engineers blast narrow gaps through wire and mines, just wide enough for a man, not an army. This isn't a breakthrough. It's erosion. Every meter forward costs blood, time, breath. But the line, once thought solid, has become a collection of isolated positions, each unaware that it is now alone. Rommel is not here. He is hundreds of miles away, celebrating his wife's birthday in Germany. He had asked Hitler for permission to return earlier. He believed the invasion would come later, after better weather. No one expected this morning. In his absence, command fractures. Some German officers request permission to deploy panzer reserves immediately. The answer must come from the Führer himself. Hitler is asleep. Orders are delayed. Hours pass. The most powerful mobile force in Western Europe sits idle, engines cold, while infantry fights a war it was never meant to fight alone. By late morning, American troops crest the bluffs in scattered groups. They are shocked by what they find. No massed counterattack. No second defensive line. Just fields. Roads. Small villages waking to a war they were told would never reach this far. A German artillery battery fires blindly, then pulls back, fearing encirclement. A machine gun crew abandons a position that should have held all day. Fear travels faster than orders. At headquarters, reports finally shift in tone. Enemy elements, above the beach. Contact lost with strongpoint WN-62. Naval fire, extremely accurate. Words like contained and repulsed disappear. In Berlin, the situation map is already wrong. Hitler is awakened late. The invasion is underway. He hesitates. Is this the main effort, or a diversion before the real landing at Pas-de-Calais? For years, German intelligence has warned that Normandy might be a feint. So the panzer divisions remain locked in place. Rommel will later say the war was lost in these hours, not because German soldiers didn't fight, but because the system above them could not react. By afternoon, Omaha Beach, once predicted to be a graveyard, is functional. Wounded are evacuated. Supplies come ashore. Artillery is hauled inland by sheer force of will. The beachhead is fragile, ugly, chaotic, but real. And the Atlantic Wall, that monument to certainty, has failed in its single purpose. Yet this is only the beginning. For while German commanders struggle to understand how concrete was breached, another front, far louder, far more visible and far more humiliating, has already been unraveling their confidence for months. High above Europe, in clear blue skies, the Luftwaffe is facing a different kind of shock. One that no bunker, no minefield, no doctrine was prepared to stop. Because while Germany poured its faith into walls and fortresses, American bombers were doing something the Luftwaffe had openly mocked. They were coming back. Again. And again. And again. And with every shattered bomber that limped home, the balance of power in the air, and soon on the ground, was shifting beyond recovery. The Laughing Sky. October 14, 1943. 10:32 hours. 30,000 feet above Schweinfurt, Germany. The sky is clean and painfully blue, the kind of clarity bomber crews fear most. Sunlight glints off aluminum skins as hundreds of aircraft grind forward in tight, geometric formations. From a distance they look serene. Up close they sound like a factory in agony. Fore right are 1820 Cyclone engines strain on each Boeing B-17 Flying Fortress, propellers biting thin air, superchargers whining. Inside the fuselage, oxygen masks hiss. Frost creeps along exposed metal. Men stamp their feet to keep blood moving. This is not stealth. This is defiance. German radar stations light up across the Reich. Controllers track the incoming stream and begin vectoring fighters toward it. Messerschmitt Bf-109s and Focke-Wulf Fw-190 scramble from airfields below, climbing hard, engines pushed to the red. For years the Luftwaffe had laughed at this idea. Daylight bombing. Unescorted. Straight into Germany. Hermann Göring had promised it would never work. He told Hitler that no enemy bomber could survive such missions. That German fighters and flak would tear them apart long before they reached their targets. The early evidence seemed to support him. In 1942 and early 1943, American bomber losses are brutal. Entire formations are ripped open by cannon fire. Flak bursts punch holes through wings and fuselages. Crews bail out over hostile territory, watching their aircraft spiral away in flames. German fighter pilots grow confident. Aggressive. Almost casual. Then something unexpected happens. The bombers don't stop coming. They change tactics. They tighten formations. Overlapping fields of fire turn each bomber group into a flying fortress in fact, not just in name. A single B-17 carries up to 13.50 caliber machine guns, manned by gunners trained to fire in coordination, not panic. And when German fighters attack, they don't always get clean kills anymore. At Schweinfurt the Luftwaffe comes in waves. Head-on attacks. Slashing passes from above. Rocket salvos fired from beyond defensive range. Explosions rip through the bomber stream. Wings shear off. Fuselages break apart midair. Yet still bombers stagger onward. A B-17 loses an engine. Then another. The aircraft drops out of formation, bleeding speed and easy target. German fighters circle in for the kill. Inside, the pilot fights the controls, knuckles white, legs numb from cold and fear. The tail gunner fires until his guns jam. The waist gunner keeps shooting anyway. Flak explodes beneath the bomber. The blast lifts it then slams it downward. The bombardier is wounded. The navigator's charts are shredded. Oxygen lines rupture, filling the compartment with fog. And still, somehow, the aircraft stays in the air. When the bomb run begins, nothing else matters. Doors open. Bombs fall. Factories below vanish in smoke and fire. Then comes the long, murderous turn for home. This is where the legend begins. Aircraft that should not fly do. B-17s return with noses torn open, tails nearly gone, wings holed through with flak the size of fists. Some land without landing gear. Others skid down runways on bare aluminum. Crews climb out shaking, staring at their aircraft in disbelief. German pilots see it too. They see bombers absorbing punishment that would destroy fighters instantly. They see machine gun fire converging into lethal cones. They see comrades failing to return from missions that once felt routine. Losses mount. The math changes. To shoot down one bomber now costs fighters. Train pilots. Fuel. Time. Germany can replace machines faster than men, but not fast enough. Then in late 1943 the final insult arrives. Long-range escorts. P-51 Mustangs appear over Germany, sleek and deadly, their drop tanks carrying them deep into Reich airspace. For the first time German fighters are hunted from takeoff to landing. Airfields become killing grounds. Veteran pilots die not in heroic dogfights, but climbing sluggishly under surprise attack. The Luftwaffe begins to unravel. By early 1944 the sky belongs to the Allies. Bombers roam almost freely. Factories burn. Synthetic fuel plants collapse. Ball-bearing production falters. Every panzer, every truck, every aircraft now competes for shrinking supplies. And far below, on the coast of France, Rommel's Atlantic Wall sits under a different kind of pressure. Because concrete can stop bullets. Steel can stop shells. But walls cannot fight without fuel. Or air cover. Or train pilots to protect them. By the time the invasion comes, the Luftwaffe is a shadow forced to choose where it will appear, because it can no longer appear everywhere. The laughing confidence of 1940 is gone. In its place is a growing, unspoken fear that Germany has lost control of the sky, and with it the ability to decide where and when the war will be fought. And as the bombers keep coming back again and again, that fear begins to spread to every corner of the Reich, including the beaches of Normandy. The air war decides the ground. June 6, 1944. 12:11 hours. Normandy skies. The clouds break unevenly over northern France, and through the gaps come the engines, hundreds of them, layered at different altitudes, moving with purpose. Above the invasion beaches, Allied fighters orbit like guardians, weaving back and forth, noses down, eyes scanning for movement. There is almost no resistance. A lone Focke-Wulf FW-190 darts in low, firing a brief burst toward the shoreline before breaking away. Seconds later, a pair of P-47 Thunderbolts dive after it, heavy, fast, unstoppable. The German fighter vanishes inland, chased until fuel or luck runs out. For the men on the ground, this absence is as important as firepower. No Stukas screaming out of the sun. No massed fighter-bomber attacks. No Luftwaffe umbrella over the beaches. German units feel naked. Rommel had always warned that air superiority would decide the invasion. Now his prediction is reality. German troop movements are forced to hide by day, creeping along hedgerows and tree lines, vehicles camouflaged under branches, columns freezing whenever engines are heard overhead. Even then it isn't enough. Typhoons and thunderbolts hunt roads, bridges and rail lines with ruthless efficiency. Rockets slam into convoys. Strafing runs turn crossroads into wreckage. A single truck destroyed can block a route for hours, trapping units behind it. Orders arrive late. Reinforcements arrive later, or not at all. Panzer divisions finally receive permission to move, but the sky denies them speed. Tanks that should reach the front by noon don't arrive until nightfall. Fuel trucks burn. Staff cars are abandoned in ditches. Commanders lose contact with their battalions before the first shot is fired. And still, Allied bombers pass overhead. Medium bombers pound rear areas. Heavy bombers, once mocked as slow and vulnerable, flatten rail yards and marshalling points beyond the front. Every explosion echoes a truth Germany can no longer ignore. This battlefield is being shaped from the air. On the beaches, the difference is immediate. Naval gunfire and air strikes coordinate with ground advances. When a German strongpoint reveals itself, smoke markers go up. Minutes later, shells walk in with brutal accuracy. Fighters swoop low, guns flashing, pinning defenders long enough for infantry to move. This is combined arms warfare perfected under pressure. German defenders fight hard, often bravely, but they fight alone. No fighter cover. No rapid reinforcement. No ability to regroup without being seen. The Atlantic Wall was built to stop an enemy that approached only from the sea. Instead, Germany faces an enemy that owns the air, the water, and now the land. By nightfall, the beachheads link. Paratroopers from the 82nd and 101st Airborne, scattered, wounded, and disoriented, rally around crossroads and villages inland. German counterattacks stumble into ambushes they cannot see from above. Rommel races back toward France, his staff car dodging fighter patrols, forced off roads again and again. Every delay compounds the disaster. When he arrives, the truth is impossible to deny. The invasion has succeeded. Not because the wall was weak, but because everything behind it was starved. Fuel reserves are depleted by bombing. Ammunition dumps are cratered. Communications are severed. Luftwaffe units exist mostly on paper, their veteran pilots gone, their replacements inexperienced and cautious. The laughter that once followed reports of American daylight bombing is gone. In its place is a quiet understanding spreading through German headquarters. The war has shifted into a phase they cannot reverse. Air superiority has become inevitability. Every Allied soldier stepping onto French soil does so under an invisible shield forged months earlier, over Schweinfurt, Regensburg, Berlin, and the burning factories of the Reich. The B-17s that should not have survived, paid the price in aluminum and blood so that on this day German guns would look up and find nothing to answer them. The wall falls not with a single collapse, but with 1,000 delays, hesitations, and absences. And as night settles over Normandy, flares drift down over hedgerows and fields now filled with foreign troops, German commanders face a realization far more terrifying than any bombardment. This is no raid. This is no temporary foothold. This is the beginning of an ending Germany no longer has the power to stop. But the most dangerous moment is still ahead. Because when an empire realizes it is losing control, it does not retreat quietly, it lashes out, searching for one last chance to reverse the tide. And in the days that follow, the fight for Normandy will become a brutal test of whether air power alone can finish what concrete and confidence failed to prevent. The counterstroke that never comes. June 7, 1944. 2:40 hours. Near Caen, Normandy. Engines rumble softly in the dark, kept low, throttled back to whispers. Panzer crews wait inside their machines, steel hulks crouched beneath trees and camouflage nets. Maps glow faintly under shaded lamps. Orders are repeated in hushed voices, as if the night itself might be listening. This is where Germany is supposed to strike back. The doctrine is clear. When an enemy lands, you counterattack immediately, hard, fast, with armor. You smash the beachhead before it hardens, before supply and artillery catch up. Rommel had preached it endlessly. But now, even at night, fear governs movement. The crews know what daylight brings. They have seen it already: burning columns, shattered half-tracks, dead horses tangled in wreckage, roads cratered into impassable scars. They have learned that movement equals visibility and visibility equals death. So they wait. Orders finally come down the chain: advance toward the coast at first light. Some officers protest. Others comply. Dawn arrives like a verdict. As the sun lifts, Allied fighters are already in the air. They don't patrol randomly. They hunt. Bridges, road junctions, forest clearings, anything that looks like a staging area is watched, photographed, marked. The first panzer column breaks cover. Within minutes, rocket trails streak down from the sky. Typhoons scream in low, fast, terrifying passes, their cannons chewing into steel. A lead tank erupts in flame, blocking the road. The column bunches. Pilots circle back. What should have been a counterstroke becomes a traffic jam under fire. Crews abandon vehicles and scatter into ditches and hedgerows, cursing the sky more than the enemy in front of them. Radios go silent. Commanders lose control before they ever make contact. This is the invisible power of air supremacy. Not destruction alone, but paralysis. German units that survive the morning are forced to halt, disperse, hide again. Fuel is burned without movement. Morale drains away hour by hour. Every plan assumes freedom to maneuver. None of them have it. Meanwhile, on the Allied side, the opposite is happening. Supplies roll in unmolested. Artillery is aim-placed. Engineers repair roads under fighter cover. Wounded are evacuated smoothly. The beachhead thickens, deepens, becomes permanent. German commanders send reports upward, their tone growing desperate. Enemy air activity overwhelming. Movement impossible by day. Counterattack delayed. Delayed becomes cancelled. Rommel understands what this means. Without air cover, armor cannot mass. Without mass, it cannot break through. Without breakthrough, Normandy becomes a grinding battle Germany cannot afford. And grinding battles favor the side with more fuel, more men, more skies. The laughter that once followed reports of American bombers is now replaced by a bitter silence. Those bombers, slow, vulnerable, obsolete, have done something no wall, no tank, no general could undo. They have made time Germany's enemy. Every hour that passes strengthens the invasion. Every delay weakens the defense. This is no longer a battle to throw the Allies back. It is a battle to slow the inevitable. And as the days drag on, another realization begins to surface among German officers and soldiers alike. The Atlantic Wall was never the real defense. The real defense was supposed to be the Luftwaffe. And it is gone. The fortress that learned to bleed. June 13, 1944. 17-18 hours. Somewhere over the English Channel. A B-17 lifts off the runway heavy with fuel and bombs, its tires leaving the ground slowly, reluctantly. The crew feels the familiar vibration as the aircraft claws into the air. Below, England slips away, green fields, hedgerows, the thin ribbon of coast, until there is only water and sky. This flight feels different. Not safer. Just inevitable. The men aboard know the route now by memory. They know the checkpoints, the flak belts, the fighter lanes. They know the sound a near miss makes compared to a direct hit. They have seen enough damage to know which holes matter, and which ones you can live with. What once felt like a gamble now feels like routine. Across the channel, German radar operators track the formation and feel the same dull certainty. The bombers are coming. Again. They will reach their targets. Again. The question is no longer if, only how much damage. Flak batteries open fire out of habit as much as hope. Black bursts dot the sky, timed perfectly, technically flawless. But the formations barely flinch. They adjust altitude. Close ranks. Press on. There are fewer fighters this time. The ones that rise to meet them do so cautiously, probing the edges, breaking off at the first sign of escorting Mustangs. Veteran aces are gone now, dead, captured, or burned out. Their replacements lack hours, confidence, and the luxury of mistakes. One German pilot lines up a pass on a trailing B-17, fires a burst, and breaks away too early. He does not press the attack. He has learned what happens when you stay too long. Inside the bomber, the crew doesn't cheer. They don't celebrate. They just keep scanning their sectors, counting rounds, waiting for the next hit. When it comes, it's violent. Flak detonates beneath the aircraft, lifting it like a toy. The nose dips. The cockpit fills with noise and dust. A warning light flickers, then steadies. The pilot corrects. The bomber slides back into formation. It keeps flying. This is how the myth becomes reality, not through invincibility but through survivability. The B-17 does not win by avoiding damage. It wins by absorbing it, by giving crews the chance to come home and fly again. Every bomber that returns carries experience. Every crew that survives becomes harder to kill. By the summer of 1944, the Luftwaffe understands this too late. Their interception rates fall. Their fuel reserves are critically low. Training pipelines collapse. Aircraft sit idle for lack of parts. Meanwhile, the bombers keep returning. Factories burn faster than they can be repaired. Synthetic fuel plants, Germany's lifeline, are reduced to twisted metal. Production numbers on paper lie. Reality shows otherwise. Panzer divisions wait for fuel that never arrives. And on the ground in Normandy, this absence is lethal. German counterattacks stall not because of lack of courage, but because tanks cannot move, artillery cannot be resupplied, and units cannot coordinate without communications that survive the night. Each bomb dropped weeks earlier now echoes through every failed maneuver. The Atlantic Wall did not fall in a day. Germany's air defense did. And once that happened, everything else followed. Back over the channel, the B-17 turns for home. The crew exhales, though none of them say it aloud. The coastline appears through haze. Radios crackle with instructions. Damaged aircraft are given priority. Ambulances wait on the tarmac. The bomber lands hard but intact. Ground crews swarm it, counting holes, shaking their heads. The nose art is scorched. The tail is ragged. One engine leaks oil steadily onto the concrete. The crew climbs down slowly, stiff and silent. They will fly again. This is the part Göring never accounted for. He believed morale would break. That fear would thin the formations. That losses would force retreat. Instead, repetition forged resilience. By D-Day, by the breakout from Normandy, by the push across France, the presence of Allied bombers is no longer debated, it is assumed. Plans are made under their shadow. German strategy bends around their absence. The Luftwaffe no longer mocks the bomber. It avoids it. And avoidance is not defense. As summer deepens, Allied forces surge inland. Normandy's hedgerows become killing grounds, but the outcome is no longer in doubt. Germany fights with shrinking tools against an enemy that controls when and where battles happen. The fortress that was supposed to protect the Reich has learned how to bleed. And bleed it does, slowly at first, then faster, until every remaining option costs more than Germany can afford. Yet even now, some in Berlin cling to hope. They speak of new weapons, of miracles, of one final reversal that will change everything. But on the airfields of England, the bombers are already lining up again. Engines turning. Crews boarding. Maps unfolding. They are not waiting for miracles. They are making the end unavoidable. The illusion finally breaks. July 25, 1944. 9:38 hours. Near Saint-Lô, Normandy. The morning air is heavy, unmoving. Low clouds hang over the hedgerows, pressing sound down toward the earth. German infantry crouch in shallow foxholes, rifles resting on dirt walls worn smooth by weeks of waiting. They listen. Then the sky begins to growl. It starts as a distant vibration felt more than heard. Cups rattle. Leaves tremble. Veterans glance upward without needing to be told what it means. Newer men follow their eyes. The sound becomes thunder. Hundreds of engines roll in formation, invisible behind the cloud cover but unmistakable in scale. American heavy bombers, B-17s and B-24s, are arriving not for factories, not for rail yards, but for the battlefield itself. This is new. And terrifying. The German line here is thin, overextended, already strained by weeks of constant pressure. Units are under strength. Ammunition is rationed. Fuel is almost non-existent. Command posts have moved so often their maps no longer match reality. When the bombs fall, they fall wrong, too close. Explosions tear open the ground with a violence no artillery can match. Earth lifts, folds, collapses. Entire platoons vanish in clouds of smoke and debris. Communications lines are severed instantly. Officers die without ever seeing the enemy. This is Operation Cobra, the American breakout. 4 months, German commanders believed Normandy could be held if they just bled the Allies long enough. That terrain would compensate for air power. That experience would compensate for numbers. Now those beliefs are crushed in seconds. When the bombing lifts, American ground forces surge forward behind rolling artillery and armor. This time there is no coherent response. German positions exist only as isolated pockets, blind and stunned. Tanks that should counterattack have no fuel. Units that should maneuver are pinned by fighter bombers prowling overhead. The hedgerows that once favored defense become traps. German soldiers retreat not because they are beaten, but because staying means annihilation. The front collapses unevenly, then suddenly everywhere. Gaps open, then widen, then connect. Rommel is wounded days earlier, his staff car strafed by Allied aircraft. He is removed from command at the worst possible moment. Leadership fractures again just as decisions matter most. And above it all, the bombers keep coming. They do not need to hit front lines perfectly. They only need to ensure one thing: Germany cannot recover its balance. No pause. No regrouping. No second line. What breaks in late July is not just a defensive position. It is belief. German commanders realize they are no longer fighting for victory, or even for stalemate. They are fighting for time. Time to retreat, time to save units from encirclement, time to prevent total collapse. Time the Allies deny them from the air. By August, Allied armor is racing through openings the Luftwaffe would once have closed. The Falaise pocket snaps shut, trapping tens of thousands of German troops. Roads clog with wreckage. Columns stretch for miles, helpless under constant attack. Pilots report targets everywhere. There is no front anymore, only motion and destruction. American, British, and Canadian forces advance not cautiously, but confidently, knowing that any resistance spotted from the air can be crushed within minutes. The battlefield becomes transparent. Nothing large moves without being seen. This is the final outcome of the bomber war. Goring mocked. Not just ruined cities. Not just broken factories. But an army that cannot maneuver. Germany had built its doctrine on movement, blitzkrieg, shock, speed, decision. Now its units move only at night, in fragments, praying for cloud cover that no longer matters. Every retreat turns into a rout. Every regrouping attempt becomes a target. And as Allied forces surge toward Paris, German soldiers sense something deeper than defeat. They sense exposure. There is nowhere left to hide. Behind the lines, civilians watch bombers pass overhead in endless streams, no longer counting them, no longer flinching. The Reich has become accustomed to vulnerability. Sirens sound. Factories stop. Fuel runs out. Promises fade. The Atlantic Wall was Germany's last great promise of control. When it failed, the war shifted from strategy to inevitability. By late summer 1944, even the most loyal officers understand the truth they dare not speak aloud. The Allies decide when battles happen, where they happen, how long they last. Germany reacts. And reaction is not power. As Paris falls and Allied columns roll east, the bombers pivot with them, extending the reach of that invisible grip deeper into the Reich. Rail lines shatter. Bridges vanish. Refineries burn again. The sky is no longer contested. It is occupied. And in that occupation, one final realization settles over Germany's military leadership like ash after an explosion. The B-17s did not just survive the Luftwaffe. They outlived it. They endured long enough to make every German plan obsolete, every defensive line temporary, every hope conditional on a miracle that never arrives. The laughter from early war briefings has curdled into memory, something spoken of with embarrassment if at all. Because now, when the bombers come, and they always come, Germany has no answer. Only endurance. And endurance, against an enemy that returns every time, is not enough. The return that cannot be stopped. August 25, 1944. 15:46 hours. Paris, France. The city is alive with tension and anticipation. Smoke rises from the outskirts, but the streets hum with the restless energy of liberation. From the air, Allied reconnaissance photographs reveal German units in disarray, columns abandoned, bridges demolished, panzer divisions immobilized. The Reich's finest soldiers are scattered, exhausted, and uncoordinated. Above, the sky hums. Engines churn. Formation after formation of B-17 flying fortresses and B-24 Liberators threads the clouds, their presence unrelenting. Even now, months after the first raids over Schweinfurt and Regensburg, the air war continues to dictate the ground. Every movement by German forces is measured against the shadow of these bombers. Infantry moves carefully through the streets and countryside, yet even here in the heart of occupied France, the reach of Allied air power is felt. Fighter bombers hover over critical junctions, strafing retreating units, ensuring no army can regroup, no supply convoy can recover, no morale can rebound. The once mocked American bombers have become omnipresent, inescapable, inevitable. German command collapses further. Reports of destroyed bridges, burning trains and wrecked convoys fill headquarters. Orders to regroup are ignored or impossible to carry out. Each attempt to recover a defensive posture is met with another wave of bombers, every return flight a reminder that Germany is now on the defensive in every domain: land, sea, and air. For Rommel and his peers, the realization is absolute. The war is no longer fought on their terms. Concrete walls cannot shield an army from omnipresent bombardment. Steel bunkers cannot stop what comes from the clouds. Strategy is hollow when one cannot move, cannot supply, cannot act without being obliterated from above. And yet, there is awe amidst the devastation. The men flying these bombers understand the weight of what they carry, not just bombs but the fate of an empire. Each damaged aircraft that returns brings new lessons, new refinements, and the silent assertion that Germany's dominance of Europe is slipping irretrievably. By the time Paris falls and Allied forces surge eastward, it is undeniable. The Luftwaffe's arrogance has been turned to impotence. The B-17s, once considered too slow, too fragile, too vulnerable, have reshaped the battlefield. They have rewritten the rules of war. They have returned again and again, not as invaders, but as arbiters of inevitability. The Atlantic Wall, Rommel's concrete masterpiece, stands as a monument to human ambition and miscalculation. But the air above it, patrolled, dominated, unyielding, proves far more decisive. The lesson is harsh and unambiguous. In modern warfare, mastery of the skies is mastery of the earth below. And in that mastery, the Allies secured not only victory in Normandy but a template for all campaigns that would follow. Every B-17 that returned intact was a statement. Defiance, resilience, and precision can overcome even the most formidable defenses. The wall failed. The Luftwaffe failed. And yet, through persistence and courage, the Americans showed that endurance, when combined with strategy and technology, is unstoppable. The war would rage on for another year, but the tide had irrevocably turned. From Omaha Beach to the skies over Germany, the story is the same. The invader that was mocked returned. And every time it returned, Germany's illusions crumbled a little further. History would remember the Atlantic Wall, the panzer divisions, the fortified coastlines. But history would never forget the bombers that refused to die, and the crews who made sure they always came back.